Efficiency counts.
It's a shame that things.
Now we've got, and you know,
I just think
it's the rest.
it's one of that, because I'm working on this.
Let me come get a hug, man. It's been a long time.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's right. But they.
You feel relief?
Okay.
I believe that, but I'm so glad to see you. I was talking to Deb today. She said she'll reach out to you soon. Yeah.
Cameras obviously.
You know, I'm Judy Richardson.
Okay.
How's your family?
I'm doing pretty good.
So that's where the movie camera is. Okay. Yeah, but then, that could go rig up. So
That's why I'm needing.
Yeah, they're in the.
I mean, it's the last few months of.
So everybody's waiting, you can let them all in.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. They should, yes, they should. It's still being tested for all. That kind of power. I don't know if it was like.
You were going different.
But you know, Jack it's all the same. Look at me like the things way. Fair enough.
I'm one of those people, so I can fully appreciate that.
Right, like, okay. Right now I wanna go.
Because I was just like, wow.
And it's funny the different reactions from people too. Some people, one person, so you'll see.
Oh.
You could be, because I can tell that show, but not have felt that.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting.
I'll get out of your way again.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, strange.
You think which is stuff is.
You know, anyway, yeah, that was a very interesting time.
Yeah. Still is. Because I'm sure. I'll be in this.
Okay, you can go
I'll go service it. Yeah. And I'm thinking it was a little more than 11 doses now, but still fresh. Yeah, very fresh. I'm gonna get, and you're gonna on the side. Yeah, this is kind of, you know, it's like a school.
Yeah, we have to get together.
So good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Oh, man. You saw.
He would say, Sam.
Yeah, I'll send my feedback. I'll have that to say. I'll look at his eyes. Now.
Let's look down a long vacation.
We're
You know the elevators are?
No, I don't know. I got it.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Right now, he was had really, but still happens. As the Smith.
Oh, yeah.
But she was just a baby,
Okay.
just a baby that.
No, last time when I delivered. So that was
81.
talking or something.
That's the baby.
So,
Think about her.
are you gonna tell us what made you make this decision?
That's okay.
That's in fact what they're saying.
Yep.
Announcement about how the opinion is. You know, and be on the opinion side. You know, that was extra.
Right.
How was that received?
She wrote a column.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I told her, you know what the answer is, the matter of fact. You know, right. It was very clear.
Yeah, she just read the situation. Well, she said that.
I did, but. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It was one of my grandfather's stories there.
But we had a couple times that they didn't know.
Oh, that's great.
So that's.
Yeah, you'll make that.
Yeah, I thought
If you
you
could
were.
have.
What she said she might do too.
That's apparently very much.
Oh, I only get the votes on Saturday and Sunday. So I must say, I think that I was in the watch list. Lots. Yeah, I know. I go to the editorial myself.
Well, this gym was also so good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Was what people had gone to.
Yeah.
You know,
Come on.
and so the numbers are showing. That's not a lot. Because it's always not.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you already read, so maybe you should have.
I'm on the graduate report session.
And I.
He's had a good job.
Why didn't you? I think you bring up.
Maybe several hospitals. It was there.
Well, I like
It
it.
was.
You're on MSNBC, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I need to.
Well, before that,
No, even before that, you didn't remember, you did come to the school. As their new house for that 20 years, but before that, it was a homicide scene of 8th Street, so somewhere.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately.
City seems a lot safer.
Gene, you already had your last day?
Reception.
Yes, but no. Yes, I have. Oh, really? Officially. But I've been.
There's Norma. Yeah. Megan.
That makes it official.
Exactly. Reclaim host. I don't know what that means. Jackie, good to see you.
Hi,
Ah, there's Megan.
Megan is here.
Okay, good. Good to see you.
Yeah, 20 years, Sam. 20 was enough. 20 was. No parking. That was the.
Transcript captions, blah, blah, blah.
You know that, but the parking, to rush hour, it's just, you know, that was. The main school in, but it's been good. A lot better.
Richard, you're in two places at
Yeah, why
once.
we already set up podium.
You got two challenges. One is that we've been had here and there. But if you're broadcasting, I think from just one at the moment, already, rather than from.
Should I turn this off? Or is the audio on this off or something?
Yes, that would be helpful.
How do I do that? Let's see.
Mute my audio. There you go. Okay. Did that go to your hand up? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. But now, yeah, I mean, the camera can grow, right? So you can still control the camera. So the challenge is what's on the screen, it's the camera as well. It's the camera in the room is behind this. Okay, Vanessa just email, so what should I tell her? Say?
Oh, this is funny.
Which link? The overall link? Okay. Okay, so you to your email? Oh, Andy Young. Oh, so glad to see you. Yes, yes, yes. Wow, this is a real treat. Likewise, likewise. Well, haven't seen anywhere. Oh, good, good. Yes, yes, yes. Cheryl, you know, I thought she's the president of Cheryl. Somebody else you could know. That was her first like Dow Jones News. Oh, yeah. I worked in the local copy. She's not there recruiting. No.
Think they're quite higher. I run music number. I did.
Oh, okay. So
and it's fun.
okay.
I went to Madagascar for some reason. I'm down there.
Yes, Paul is my one every critic. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I'm not doing anymore.
I know when you see others fly.
It's good. No, it's
I was trying to get out the energy so I didn't kill people when I was like, I was not expecting.
That's why they're still living now. That's right.
All that, so yeah, Eddie Robinson's house, when we were talking about the 60 that was made and all of this.
Right.
And that. That was a great.
Yes, it was. And the other.
They're all sizes.
Was just out of, yes.
But basically, each ready.
This one is, yeah.
Yes, it was kind of a meeting.
Intergenerational conversation.
Yeah, but it was with the SNCC Legacy Project and some of the folks. Who
Oh,
that some of the young people.
I had some students that weren't familiar with that. And they were telling me they got the information on the site called SNCC. And at first it didn't strike me what they were talking about. And I went, So, hey, intergenerational.
No, that's right. We just came back from, we had an NE wire.
You want me to email you?
And so before they did that, we got. Sunday, and that's the last one.
I see his name on the list. Oh, yeah, but I don't see his face.
That's when I found out. Got you down. Yes. Terminated.
Well, Asala has something going on right now. And then they have a rally Saturday.
Saturday, yes, that's right.
I'll come back and have this.
Oh, wait. Yeah, and it's to go to the Blacksonian after
Right.
that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, whatever,
What she
whatever
said.
case. That's right. It's not, you know, and.
Maybe he knows that he's on.
You will have numbers for names.
The one who came out with that whole idea. So together with the organization in the South. At the Johnny Wilson Village. It goes from that way. Saturday from 11 to 1. That's what I'm thinking. I may take my TV. Yes. This is too much. They wouldn't be for this stuff. Okay.
I think it's chicken salad.
That I can do too. Okay.
Well, and yeah, it's on here. I don't see him on the screen.
There seemed to be a lot of back and forth and confusion as to what's.
I guess so.
Yeah, that is mistaken us.
Yes.
All that stuff with that.
But you saw they were trying to do this, taking out the green stuff.
Yeah, but I think they sent out a thing saying that's not the truth.
Oh.
Send it out. You know.
Well, do they have any head at all? I mean, is there any director? Is there any internal director?
I mean, I don't think at the end of the day. And you saw what happened at Justice. Wait a minute. So I mean, it almost does no good. It is. You're gonna carry on that. See, then when you carry that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Congratulations, Richard.
Yeah, you can go fund me page. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So it's big part of it. And she's. What she's doing. Her job. It's the fine thing and
Yeah.
US Embassy has. She thinks she's, is DEI or woke.
Right.
None of that. That's took out.
Yeah, the brain.
And. Didn't go there.
So showed up. It was not planned, but it was very much. Let me invite everyone to help yourself to some food before the program begins. Probably will be less willing to around.
Help them come out over there. Maybe some of the.
Yeah, no.
I was like, I don't think you did.
Wait. My experience, the croissants are chicken salad, tuna salad, and egg salad. Otherwise, it's a lot.
So you still stay in touch with Carol?
Yeah.
Oh, you know. Right.
Yeah, go, yeah, I'm trying to get this on Facebook.
Yes, it is. Busier than usual. We'll work for the retirees.
Well, you're here. Oh, no, he's not. He never argued.
I was.
But I'm glad you're here.
Talk about the thing at some point.
Yeah, we can, but not.
Not tonight. We don't do these things.
That's what most important.
Ah, I hear Gene in the background, so. Oh, wait.
I don't know, I was thinking about that because so many of my cohorts are retired, and so he has.
Thanks, but the time between off the west coast.
A few years, I think, yeah.
Everybody just put down that's for the other day and got her.
Yes, yes.
So, Ms. Funyuns, how were you raising? We have this, you probably just remember.
You know, whatever the chat is, people have it, chit chat, it's showing that it bust boys when you need it.
Oh, we're not muted.
At least you're right.
Yeah, they do what you think of that, you know, and you
I-
put me your nephew.
I had a cousin, yeah,
Cousin.
yeah, cousin, he was of that age group.
You don't leave any
Absolutely.
comments, that article got
Not five.
365, and then it up.
Dan Savage, and all these other people. So it's very popular. Then they kept wanting me to do that again.
To do more,
Like,
right.
it's a-
I did it.
I'm
I
not sure
did
I
it.
can do that again.
I did it. No.
So you need an account.
Thank you.
I'm suggesting to train.
Kind of a unique station.
37 people.
Wow.
On to the next fair. Let's get it done.
So how are you?
Good.
Okay. How's Vinny? Oh, man. Hey, Gene, Megan Rosenfeld says, I hear Gene in the background. Let's say hello to her.
Yeah, well.
I didn't see what I did.
Okay. Yeah, I was like 13.
Hello.
See you there.
Always a pleasure.
Hi, Jackie, says Megan. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Charlene.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's great to see you all.
Irma.
Good evening.
Hello, everybody.
Faces that I
Angela.
remember, and we're all here. This is wonderful. So many people I haven't seen for such a great time. Yes, yes.
Oh, man. Live stream. Oh, good. I came on Facebook.
If I go back to that also.
It's Sylvester. That's his sideways. I'm sideways. Let's see if we can get me straight. Am I straight now?
Yes.
All right.
Changing of.
I've been accused of worse things than being sideways.
Well, you're good. I just had a board there. And then I worked for the hurt.
Must be yours.
And then I.
This time I went for some.
Yeah, no, shit, not
And because of issues that.
Yeah.
Like a synagogue. And hang out there.
Then, I mean, they're great people.
Yes.
I love what it's done. It's just heavy, it's sort of in the US.
Good to see you.
I finally figured out how to get on Facebook. Oh,
And you know,
Figured it out.
Because you could not train any black academics. Anybody could get out there.
Girl section, yay.
So you gave the keys to the ANC, just, you know, Mercedes or the friend, like everybody.
Yep. But I still want to have the high pieces. Because I get all of it.
Somebody want to say, especially your lifetime.
Great. Really in that.
The,
On the other end.
you know, say people who didn't have any before.
Yeah, excellent.
That's how I was.
In the middle, you see them.
We're out of the pillars. And
Already
in
is.
your hands, there was in the neighborhood, we have lots of different things that we.
Guaranteed to tell us. That's consistent, right in the beginning.
Yes.
Yes, got it. So.
That's fine.
Read that, I didn't even see you. Oh.
I like to give it to you.
Oh, really?
Right.
AMC lost the songs.
Thank you, co-host.
You
want is good.
So if we look at what happened when.
You know, some of these people have numbers instead of names, and I don't know who the heck they are.
Mathematicians.
Take a chance. Okay, I'm making you the co-host. Now, where are you? Let's see. Where are you?
They were having like
I got to go look down the list here. Oh, there you are.
Which is not that far.
Hey, co-host. Okay, got it. Okay, it's 9 minutes. We're 9 minutes in.
Oh, I just saw a photo. I definitely know now, but I didn't.
Okay, I'll just call on them and let them take it away. Yeah. I don't need to know all the details. Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Sometimes this is
Okay. 75 already. Okay, we're
learning. I don't know because it was not taught in school.
You make that up, right? He really said that. Oh, my God.
okay, I'm ready.
This is after the main.
So, yeah, yes. On the schedule here. Daniel Arby is not going to be here after all.
That's what I'm okay.
It was before turned around Tuesday.
Does Marcy? Okay. So I just say, shut up, everybody.
Hello.
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 Okay, ready to start. Okay, welcome to the Journal-isms Roundtable.
Good people and people on
In there.
what's
What's that? Speak up. Okay. My name is Richard Prince. I write an online column called Journal-isms. It's journal-isms.com on diversity issues. I'm getting it. In the news business. This roundtable is an extension of that. We started this roundtable in 1999 when a friend of ours was leaving to pursue a doctorate. He said, keep these going. We met every month in various restaurants, Washington, D.C., until the COVID pandemic, when we switched to Zoom. Our participation multiplied, and we hope to have more roundtables that are hybrid, such as the one we're in now, meeting in person, as well as having people attend via Zoom. This is about our 6th or 7th so far. We think of this as an online dinner party. Those of us here have a light snack as sandwiches as the dinner. The purpose is to network and to learn. Those are the dual purposes there. Some of the networking takes place in the chat room. So please feel free to make use of it. In fact, it's more important than ever with the number of people we have, more than 100 that's registered this which is our largest ever. Special welcome to those on Facebook. Please leave messages in the comment section if you want to reach out.
Zoom call now.
So,
I said I'm on a Zoom call.
done by our local broadcast legends, Sam
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
co-founder of the National Association of Black Journalists, celebrating the 50th year this year. And they're going to direct the presentation of our dear friend, who's a member of our Journals Strategy Committee, Kenneth Walker, who worked for the Washington Star, ABC News, NPR, and other places. So take it away, Maureen and Sam.
Are we okay here?
You're okay there.
Okay.
I think
Well, welcome everybody, and we're so happy to be here. We you spend a few minutes talking about our long friend, our longtime friend, and co-worker and colleague, and how much he meant to us, as well as how much he meant to Washington per se, because he grew up here in Washington, and also all that he contributed to his field. And we want to start with a video, which my esteemed colleague Sam Ford produced overnight, actually in about 10 seconds.
He looks like it.
Using some incredible video of a cat, which some of you may never have seen before. And I think you will enjoy it very much. It's a bit of a look at him and his personality.
That's when we all had hair.
Go and get some volume.
So anyway, I can start talking. You don't know what's going on there. But anyway, Kenny obviously worked for ABC News. He's a native Washingtonian. He covered the Jesse Jackson campaign. He covered apartheid in South Africa. When USA Today decided to establish a television show, he was one of the people that they brought in as anchors of the show. And are we gonna hear this? Like, well, no, I mean, but he talks in it too. That was the reason. Well, anyway, okay, and so he was at NPR, and he covered probably just about every country in most of the countries in Africa at one point or other. Oh, wonderful! Thank you. Some of it doesn't work unless you got it.
Are the Zoom people hearing it?
You gotta kill one of Richard's streams.
You want me to do it? I thought it was yeah.
That's your folder. And he went back to South Africa. Africa correspondent for NPR, National Public Radio. He covered news in almost every country on the continent. So we're told he moved back to DC 7 years ago. He needed a kidney. And the word went out to Archbishop all male.
I don't think it's me.
Richard, you need to mute one of your channels.
7 years old, he wasn't accepted.
Yeah, we can't hear this.
They figured out later.
It's echoing.
His high school play. Side story.
Richard, you use your machine. The others, maybe not.
Phone.
Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Duffy?
Yes, it's Sylvester.
Are you going to, or do you plan on attending Alexis's going home service?
I'm trying not to.
Okay.
I don't like funerals.
I can probably give you all a link if they want to watch it.
Well, the people are saying, that they can't hear it either.
Okay, well, anyway, yes, his nephew is here with us in the room.
They're still in.
Cousin is yeah, cut that off.
Somebody going to tell us what's happening?
Yes.
What's happening?
Nothing, apparently.
They must be trying to adjust the audio and don't.
But maybe they're hearing it on Facebook and not on the Zoom. Is that the problem?
No, when you have more than 2 people in the same room on the same Zoom, you're going to get feedback. So someone has to be silent.
So can you hear us now?
We heard you.
Yeah.
All right, well, good. So my name is Jeff Brown, and I was Kenny's cousin, and we were just speaking about not only his role in a South African soap opera called Generations. He was actually in Hotel Rwanda, but it didn't make the cut. So his ended up on the floor, but he had a role in that. And as Sam said, he was in PR and CARE. So whenever I'd go, he'd be there for 2 days and off to another country. He actually went to the French Riviera to take a French immersion class. And I said, oh yeah, that's really tough.
Dirty, thankless.
That's hard stuff. You're really roughing it. But 16 years there, really, really instrumental in inviting, 16 years in Joburg. And some of the homes he had, I think Brenda was saying that she stayed in one of his homes, and they were Morningside. It was one of those, 8 bedrooms, guest cottages, right? Guest cottages, and all of that. And he told me that his first trip to South Africa was so meaningful to him. If he ever got the chance to go back, he was going to go and live. And I think I noticed she was there. Charlene Hunter Galt was the NPR go-to. And when she stepped down, he filled her shoes. And so my first trip, I was jet lagged. And we went to her home at North Cliff, literally Northwest, one of the two, and it was a sprawling home. And I said, Ms. Hunter Galt, I'm tired. She said, honey, in my house, we dance. There's none of that. So we danced, really warm. I just talked to her a couple of days ago, really.
Charlene is on that.
Okay, good. Yeah, she made it clear there was no sitting. You were gonna dance. And so she and Ron were super hospitable. And in fact, all the African Americans who were in Joburg, one of the things that Kenny said to me was, if you come here to do good, the place will treat you right. If you come to just take, it'll chew you up. And so I think that's why he lasted 16 years. His motives were to help and rebuild a brand new country. When Brenda and I were just talking about, some of the struggles they're still dealing with. But my first trip to South Africa was 28 days. Joburg, Victoria Falls, Cape Town, Durban, the whole 9 yards. And so going over, I was apprehensive, right? So I'm an adult, I've traveled internationally, but the media might, have you think you might want to think twice about going to Africa. 28 days later, I'm on the plane and I couldn't really identify the emotion. And halfway through this monumental 18-hour flight, it hit me. I didn't want to come back. It touched me in just that way. Beautiful people, beautiful country. So I'm honored to be his cousin. As a 14-year-old away in prep school in Boston in the 70s, super hostile, Kenny was my go-to. He'd send me Nikki Giovanni, he'd send me James Baldwin. I'm actually in the yearbook like this. I was in hostile territory, no question about it. And he really, really, sort of paved the way and soothed it. So I hope that you all are able to come to his memorial on May 23rd up at Catholic. And I will say this, my mom is in the Zoom, so hello, Mom. She is now the matriarch of the family. There were 6 of them, and so there are 2 left. So I will say this, if I could have half the life that Kenny had, it would have been a great ride. So thank you all for inviting me in. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple more minutes for anybody else who wants to say something, maybe somebody on Zoom about Kenny or people.
Yeah, this is Sylvester. Richard, Kenny and met at during the Jackson campaign in 1984.
became fast friends because we had so much in common. We were born 12 days apart in August, though not in the same city or town, didn't know each other. We both became fathers of daughters when we were years old. We both started journalism careers before we were 21. Him at the Washington Star, me at Newsweek. And we were first generation college students.
But you have to identify yourself too.
He did.
Oh, he did? Okay.
He did. To the best of my memory, he did.
All right. Sorry.
We, with all of that, the one thing I'd like to say about Kenny is that, you know, I had sort of very high profile jobs at mainstream publications, Newsweek, Time, etc. I learned something very important from Kenny Walker. And that was how to demand respect from my employers when I was in mainstream media. In the beginning, I never pushed back against things like, for instance, once I asked a Newsweek editor about possibility of going to work for Newsweek in Africa, and he told me that he was uncomfortable sending Black reporters to Africa because they could be objective. I was offended, but I let it pass. Kenny taught me how not to let those kinds of things pass, that you had to stand up and make them respect you, tell the people that was not only offensive, but, you know, we wouldn't stand for it. And I just want to take time to say that because, as I say, we were friends, colleagues, but he was also a teacher in many ways. And that's one of the important things that he taught me.
One thing I would also like to say is, you know, Kenny got the Frederick Douglass Award from NABJ, and he just didn't suffer things like that.
Right.
They misspelled Douglas. They only had one S.
Right.
So Kenny told them right there from the podium. Right, that, you know, please. And I just thought that was significant.
That was Kenny. This is Eugene Robinson. Kenny was my teacher too. My first job in journalism after my sophomore year at Michigan was at the Washington Star. I got a summer internship at the Washington Star. I convinced them to take me on because Michigan would pay my salary. And so he said, okay. And Kenny was there and he was, you know, I was lost. I had no idea where I was or what I was doing. And as Sylvester said, you know, he taught me how to comport myself in the newsroom, how to act, and was not easy when I screwed up, but he was a great mentor.
All right.
Well, my name is Jacqueline Demesme Gray, and on a very brief, quick, personal note, I would be remiss if I didn't share a part of his life that was very meaningful. I knew Kenny for 55 years. We were best friends. We were also husband and wife. And we had a beautiful daughter together by the name of Maisha, whom he loved dearly, whom I loved dearly. And knowing Kenny in those early years, I was 17, he was 17. He was my first love. I'd like to think I was his. Not quite sure. I have to wait until another life to find out the actual truth, but until then, I'm fine. But we had a very special relationship, and we were married for quite a few years. Kenny was always a risk taker. I knew him in his very early years. He was always an activist. He had that spirit that you all know and love so well, and really grew into it. I remember when he was a reporter at the Star, we would be on a date. And God knows if there was a fire or something going on, he would stop the car, grab his pen and pad and run an interview. Well, so much for our dinner engagement, so much for everything else we had planned, but that's just who he was. And that's what makes us love him so well. So I just want to thank everybody, and just what a blessing it is to see you. I see lots of familiar faces. I'd like to, after today, say family faces. And I want to thank each and every one of you for who you were to him, because you meant the world. We talked about this often, and I miss my dear friend, and I thank you for this opportunity. God bless and much love.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Carol Simpson here. I just want to say one quick thing. I worked with Kenny at ABC for years, and I just want to say that he was a handsome devil.
Way to go, Carol.
Okay, anybody who worked with Kenny at the Star, that's where I met him when he was working at the Star. Talk about speak up, say.
I worked with him at the Star, but I think I met him before that. I don't remember exactly where I met him. I came to DC in 1974 for Gannett News Service, and I think I met him during that period. But then I went to the Star around the beginning of 1980. And I was only there a year or so before it. I left before it folded, but it was in that final year. So, and I never really saw him at work because I worked nights in the features department. And he must have worked days. I just knew him from being around the city and around other Black journalists.
Richard, I certainly worked. This is Lorma Rackley. I worked with Kenny at the Star. We became fast friends, and I echo everything everybody else has said about his leadership abilities, his not backing down away from anything. We started a collective where we would cut out headlines that were reflective of the disparities in news coverage and stick them on the bulletin board, like in your face, you can't see it this way. And Kenny never, ever backed away from a fight. He also became my son's godfather. And as Jackie was saying, he completely adored Mia, and he shared some of that same kind of love with my son Ramal as his godfather. So I kept up with Kenny for the past 55 years. We were friends, and I was used to talking to him once a week. So it's hard for me to not tear up when I say I will miss him tremendously. And I thank you for giving me this time to chime in. And I think Jackie would probably like to do so too, because we were all friends there together at the same time. Jackie Trescott.
Jackie.
Well, yes, and I want to say that I'm beating Lerma and Angela in how long I knew Kenny. When I walked into the Star newsroom in June of 1970, he was the only person of color who was on his feet, standing, greeting me. Hey, sis, welcome to the fold. And this was a very hostile situation. The newsroom was not cordial at that point. So it was important to have a friend. And I was thinking yesterday about how, you know, you're bonded over certain things. And the day that Jimi Hendrix died, Kenny and I were standing at the teletype machine, reading it in disbelief. And all the people around us, you know, said, well, it's just another celebrity. You knew this was going to happen. But we knew in our hearts that we had lost a major figure in at least our musical life. And that kind of bond continued for years and years and years. And I was telling someone the other day that our relationship was so casual that he could call me and say, hey, sis, I need some serving spoons. Can you bring them over? You know, just out of the blue, you know, and but that's the kind of outreach and love that he shared with so many people.
Hi, everyone. If I could jump in just for a quick minute. My name is Ronnie Lancaster. I'd like to offer a perspective about Kenny's early life and a different perspective, perhaps one that some of you may not be aware. And frankly, it's a light moment. I am very happy to tell you that I've known Kenny for 60 years. Kenny and I met as freshmen at John Carroll High School in 1965. Excuse me. We left Carroll together and went to Catholic University together. I had the joy of introducing Kenny to Jackie DeMesme, who just spoke eloquently about Kenny's life. Kenny and I double dated, and Kenny and I dated the two most beautiful young ladies in all of Washington. And I'm glad that we weren't able to hear the volume of the tape that was played. But I'm glad we saw it because you saw how naturally Kenny moved with such fluidity. He was like a swan. And that's what I want to talk about. For those who may not be from Washington, if you speak to a Washington native, we will tell you with pride that when you grow up in Washington, there's one thing you know how to do, almost after you learn to walk, and that's hand dance. And Kenny, Kenny was funny, Kenny was playful, but I will tell you, and there are hand dancers in Washington. And when you grow up in the 50s and the 60s, and as we did, you go to a lot of house parties and parties in the basements of churches and the like. I have seen hand dancers from all over the city. There was no one cooler, no one who danced effortlessly as Kenny Walker. And let me tell you, I told him I am so happy that I had the joy of telling him that often, and it is not an exaggeration. So I wanted to, all of you can speak and are speaking eloquently about his journalistic integrity and excellence, but I wanted to speak to something that was far more important, and that is how so cool this brother was. So thank you for the privilege of participating with you. You are a brotherhood and sisterhood that Kenny loved, adored, and you contributed so magnificently and so fully to his life. He and I had these conversations for many years. I want to tell you how joyful he was to be your brothers and your sisters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Okay, well, one last thing, then I want you to repeat when the memorial service will be.
Yes, I'd like to just share with you, first, one thought. One of the major impacts that he had on, I think, the lives of all of us, as well as the people who consumed his reporting. He helped us to understand how Africans viewed African Americans. And because of the length of his time that he spent in South Africa, certainly, he certainly knew what he was talking about. And because he took the time to talk to us about what he saw, what he found, and show us through his eyes what it was like to be an African looking at, in the days of the civil rights movement, certainly, and on through the rest of his time with not only in South Africa with NPR, but also when he returned to the United States. So he had a major impact on perception, how we perceive ourselves and how we are perceived by others around the world. Basically, I'd like to add just one thing before we finish. One is that, as you know about Kenny's kidney transplant, and Kenny asked if any of you, or if you know anyone who is interested in making a contribution in memoriam, he would like the contributions made to the Kidney Foundation of America, and also to the Aubrey Scholarship Fund at Catholic University. And I'm sure that this gentleman, Jeff, can help you with that. Jeff knows all about that. And Richard, the memorial service for Kenny will be held on Friday, May 23rd at noon at Heritage Hall at Catholic University. So we hope to see many, many of you there.
Thank you. All right, you're there. Now we also want to toast fine gentleman sitting at our table here, Eugene Robinson, who is leaving. I don't know when his last day is or was.
It's done.
It's done. At the Washington Post, and he's been there for years. And many people are well, I'll let them speak for themselves. But glad to see him go, but glad he took the stand that he took. So let's raise the glass or bottle. Eugene Robinson, and wish him the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Now, Eugene, your turn to speak. What do you want to tell us about Why you left and what you did next?
Oh, well, I'll tell you why I left. No, I left because, I was hanging in there, right? I was gonna hang in there and, you know, it got a little, the election cycle had been grueling, but then after the inauguration, it felt important just to kind of bear witness to what was going on. And so that provided a lot of energy. But then when the owner of the Post, Jeff Bezos, announced that he wanted to what he called a significant shift in the opinion pages, and that every day we would be writing about free markets and personal liberties. And maybe some other stuff too, but that was what that was going to be the theme. No one knew exactly what that meant. Nobody still knows exactly what it means, but it means something. And it came in the context of the way Bezos has been. It changed his attitude toward Donald Trump, the Trump administration. I mean, he was, you know, I defended him wholehearedly during the first Trump administration because, you know, Donald Trump took a $10 billion contract away from Amazon Web Services, a contract that they had. They were far more qualified for than anybody else. But he was angry at the way the Post was covering him under Marty Baron and Fred Hyatt. So he took the contract away. And Bezos didn't flinch. You know, there was no discernible change. So that was good. Obviously, things are different. Saw him there at the inauguration. You saw him give $1 million to the inaugural fund. You saw him give $40 million for a documentary about Melania Trump's life, with $38 million of that going to Melania Trump. Come on. So that was the context for this this shift. And of course, the evening that he announced the shift in the morning, the opinion editor, David Shipley, resigned. And in that evening, Bezos had dinner with Trump, but I had already decided that was it for me. So I wanted to sit with that decision for a few weeks, but that's kind of it. So I wish the paper well. The news side is still doing, I think, very well right now. It's a bit depleted because so many people have left. And I have no idea how they plan to, you know, regain some of the subscription loss Post has had, because it took a nosedive after the no endorsement decision, then another nosedive after the opinion pages decision, and it's not recovering.
What's the subscription level now? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I mean, I only know that because I've been, you know, told by people on the business side that much. But they only tell us the numbers when they like them to. So, you know, I sincerely hope that the new opinion editor, whoever he or she might be, is not a MAGA person or a MAGA adjacent person, and is a serious journalist and will protect as much of the value system due to the moral compass that the Post opinion section tries to do. But the decision alone to shrink the scope of Post pages, when I think the strength of the opinion pages, it was that they're very broad and had, columnists and opinion leaders from all places along the spectrum. I think that's not just an editorial mistake. I think the business mistake is bad, but it's paper. So yeah.
Also, it's kind of a similar thing going on with CBS, 60 Minutes. Are they basically? It's like these companies buy into media organizations, and it's not, the news isn't important. It's some contract they may get down the line.
Well, right. So the parent company of CBS and Paramount is trying to do a merger that it's going to need to, it's going to have federal scrutiny and needs to be approved, basically. And so they want to get on Trump's right side. And so they are apparently going to force 60 Minutes to apologize for the sin of like very, very normal editing, right? The way they presented and like, you guys, you're the TV people, how this, but there was absolutely nothing wrong with it at all, but by anybody's standards. But apparently they're going to apologize and maybe pay some money because Trump sued them for. This is a nuisance lawsuit. There's no court in the world, except that one Trump judge in Florida. She might, she might let it go to trial. But I really don't know of any judge in the world that would not just completely toss this out. But I think they're going to sell. And I had, I have not heard from Jeff Bezos about my departure, and I don't expect to because I've met him maybe 5 times in 12 years that he's on paper. But one reason I wouldn't expect to hear from him is that about a week earlier, I had written a column just saying, all you tech moguls who are cozying up to Trump, that loyalty only runs one way with him, right? And so if you knuckle under to him, he's just gonna want more. He's gonna demand more. You're not gonna, he doesn't like you now. He just likes, he likes you to, kiss his behind. But
his ass is what he said.
Yeah, his ass. So I don't know if Jeff liked that column or not. But
Did Mark McCormick have a question on Zoom?
Thank you. This is Mark McCormick coming to you from Kansas.
Okay.
I want to thank you for your. I'm sorry. Okay. I want to thank you for your courage. But you just mentioned the subscriptions, and there were a lot of heated debates from people who were in favor of dropping subscriptions, and there were others saying, no, you're only going to hurt the news entity. What are your thoughts about that?
Thanks for the question. I'm certainly keeping my subscription, and I tell people, I urge people to continue to subscribe to the paper, and with the proviso that I'll tell you what I think you shouldn't, but anymore. But it's it's really valuable. And if I were on the news side, I don't know what I would have done, because the news side is being left alone, and it is, covering fairly and aggressively.
Houston and Golden State are playing now.
So,
okay, thank you.
And so I think that's there's a lot of value left in the post, and so I would urge people not to cancel. And we'll see what the new opinion pages look like in the future. But I'm not canceling.
Okay. All right. I think we do it. If anybody has it, first of all, make sure everybody on the Zoom is muted. so that there's no interruption or interference.
You can also mute them.
If I know who it is.
No, all. You need all.
All of them. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No, we got them. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. If anybody else have any questions for Gene, can just please put them in the chat room or on Facebook in the Facebook chat. So we'll move on to our main event, which is a discussion of what can the civil rights movement teach us in dealing with Trump and Trumpism. And I see that Ambassador Young is on the Zoom already. We want to limit. I ask all our panelists to just give us no more than 3 minutes in these introductory remarks, answering the question: what can the civil rights movement teach us journalists about Trump and Trumpism? So at least just 3 minutes for Ambassador Young. You can hear us. I don't see you yet, but
He was on there earlier.
you are there earlier. You there?
I'm here, but I don't know what you expect of me.
Well, the question is, what do you think? What are the lessons that you and learned from the civil rights movement about where we're now dealing with this?
Well, one, well, see, I'm embarrassed because I'm older than all of you all. And I left Howard in 1951 and then went south to rural Georgia and Alabama and came back to the north. And then, I mean, I was in New York from 56 to 61. But then came back in 61, and I really don't belong anywhere, but I've been everywhere. And those of you who are talking about Africa, I was in South Africa in 73 and 75, and I've had a wonderful life. I think I've made a contribution, but mostly the contribution I'm focusing on now is trying to help Atlanta survive. We've got a community that well, it's working very well, and we've had 9 black mayors in a row.
Ambassador, if I could just interrupt for just a minute. I wanted to find out more about the civil rights movement and what you thought the lessons would be for us today in dealing with Trump.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure that out. I'm a preacher too, you know, so right now I'm in the position of wait on the Lord, be in good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. And we have a lot going here, and it's going well. But it's making democracy work in spite of those who are working against it. And it seems like little things, but we've been working a long time. Like, I don't know whether you saw that Atlanta had 60% of its population that had been to college. And 26% of that group had done graduate study. Well, that's something we've been working on, well, through the lottery. And now we think we're doing pretty good, but we don't know how we're going to hold up against the onslaught that we've had for these last 100 days. The truth of it is, we have 5 or 6 groups. We're still divided by age. And instead of having a civil rights movement that's compact and concise with a leader to focus on, we have a broad base of leadership in just about every aspect of Atlanta's life. And we don't get together enough but we're still in tune. And the basis of the historically Black colleges and universities provides a connection for us. But we talk to each other over the phone, but very seldom have meetings. Now that I go to, but I turned 93 a couple of months ago. And my energy, I mean, I still go to the office 2 or 3 days a week, and I still try to speak wherever folk invite me. But I can't be a part of a movement at this point. It's just trying to hang on and trying to keep my grandchildren grounded enough that they might survive and do well. So for me, I can't call it a movement anymore. And yet there is a spiritual and economic phenomena. Well, John Bryant today had everybody wearing green socks. But I heard him on in an elementary school at 9 o'clock this morning, talking to people about financial literacy. So we still have everybody doing their thing, but it's and we work together, but we're not in a movement.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that introduction. Appreciate that. All right, Courtland and Judy, who wants to go first?
Well, a couple of things that bother me. Your name, sir?
I'm sorry. This is Courtland Cox.
I'm sorry.
President.
Courtland Cox. I'm
You're chair, okay.
I'm the chairperson of SNCC Legacy Project. And for those who want to know about the civil rights movement, we probably have more documents than anybody, probably at least 20 to 25,000 documents. So you should go to snclegacyproject.org and you can find out anything about anybody in that. And that's what I spend my time doing. Because one of the things that's important is that we have to create an infrastructure. If we're going to control our own culture and our own view and our own history, we have to create an infrastructure as opposed to criticizing others about what they don't do about our structure. We are responsible for our history because what they're trying to do at this point in this administration is to denigrate our history, disappear our history, and then attack our humanity. So you see, if people are able to define somebody as a criminal, they can send them to El Salvador without any due process. And what the big issue before us is, African Americans, is who gets to define us in this country. And in fact, one of the things that's really important is for us to begin to talk about what we see. And what kind of confuses me is that, we had Trump who came in and promised an administration of hate. I mean, he told, I hate immigrants, I hate Black people, I hate women, they're all that. And then I turn on the TV and I find out he won because it's the price of eggs. I mean, I'm trying to understand. And then people are surprised that he's continuing hate when they all think, trying to tell us it's about eggs. Who gets to define is really, really important. And my sense is that, and then they'll say, okay, well, his base and the white community will not listen to those things that deal with the question of humanity, of people who don't look like them. And it's our responsibility at the end of the day to not say no. It is our responsibility not to allow others to find our humanity.
And so for me, in terms of the lesson I learned from the civil rights movement is that you have to set the definition. I mean, one of the things that we did in the civil rights movement is set the definition, and we set it around the issue of freedom. That we said we were about freedom, and one of the things that it did, it binded the community, the Black community, don't matter what situation that we're in, and it brought a number of allies to our side. We created the definition of freedom. Whether people like it or not, one of the most liberating parts of our life, for me anyhow, is the call for Black power. Because we understood who we were. We were not being defined by others about the way we look, our hair, and so forth. I think this moment, while there is an arrogance and an ignorance pervading the country, one of the things I think we have a special responsibility is to deal with the pervasive definition of hate. It's not about eggs. It is about humanity. And my sense is one of the things that we have to begin to understand as we think about how we move forward is what is our special relationship. We cannot allow others to define what it is. So I mean, my sense is the lesson I learned from the civil rights movement is who controls the definition. I mean, it is most critical aspect of life of any battle is who controls the definition. Because who controls the definition gets to decide.
Here. I'll just add that one of the first conventions that I went to of NABJ was Atlanta. Back in '94 when Jesse Jackson spoke. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Jesse Jackson spoke at one of the first conventions of NABJ that I went to in Atlanta. And his main point was that the reason that journalists have influence is they have appraisal power. In other words, they set the definition of what's news and how things are framed. That's just what you were saying. So I just wanted to get that was that journalism connection. Okay, Judy.
Yeah, okay, I'm Judy Richardson, and I'm on the board of the SNCC Legacy Project. I worked in Mississippi, Alabama, Southwest Georgia, and then in terms of journalism, well, I worked on all 14 Hours of Eyes on the Prize, and then also worked in Charlie Cobb, one of the founders of NABJ, his father's United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice as the information director in New York. I'm just going to say a couple of things. When I go into the national office of SNCC, right, SNCC is in Atlanta, the national office is Atlanta. It is the coordination of all of the projects throughout Mississippi, Alabama, Southwest Georgia, and Arkansas. Julian Bond is our communications director. John Lewis is our chairman. And one of the things that we try and figure out is, and has already been figured out by the time I get there in '63, is how you really not control, but really as much as possible influence the narrative about who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. And so what we do is we create networks. And so we have Friends of SNCC all over the country, New York, Chicago, New Orleans, San Francisco. We have campus Friends of SNCC, and they are in UC Berkeley, NYU, all over. We create a newspaper that Julian Bond, of course, as communications director, is the editor for, and that comes out every month, and we send that out. We have a photo department because Jim Foreman, our executive secretary,
about the new version.
the national office basically is the house that Foreman built. And so it's the photo department, it's the print shop, it's the research department. I'm going to talk about that in a second very quickly. So part of it is that we know that the bottom line is we are focused on how do you get Black people registered to vote without getting them killed, right? How do you get them registered to vote without getting them killed? And so what we're doing is trying to protect the folks, the local leaders who are both guiding and guarding us in Mississippi, Alabama, Southwest Georgia, and Arkansas. But also we're trying to figure out how do you get this what we're dealing with out to the rest of the country and make them care. And part of it is, for example, when, with Senator Stennis and Senator Eastland, the two white senators from Mississippi, their thing is, look, Black people don't want to vote. They just don't want to vote. They are fine with our dealing with it. They don't want to deal with that mess. Okay. So what we're saying is, okay, we're going to do a vote. We had a freedom vote, 80,000 Black people came out. Hattiesburg, Mississippi, 1964, right? This is before COFA, before the Mississippi Freedom Summer. And what we were doing was showing 80,000 Black people. They're lining up. They're everywhere. They're in the Delta. They're down in Hattiesburg. We are showing, no, what Stennis and Eastland are doing, that is not true. You know, and by the way, the other reason you should care about Stennis and Eastland is because they control lots of resources that are affecting you in San Francisco and New York and Chicago, right? They are Senate Appropriations Committee. They are the Senate Armed Services Committee. All of the places that have control, power, and money, which are very much the same thing. That is what we're showing. That's why you should care, because Eastland and Stennis, because of seniority, they are now over all of these pots of money and this power, and it's affecting you in New York and San Francisco and Chicago. And so we do this through all of the networks. So if, for example, somebody calls in from Atlanta, from Greenwood, Mississippi, and they would call and they say, look, Mary Lane just got arrested. We would then call somebody in Chicago, Mrs. Shaw, Mimi's mother, Mrs. Shaw. And we would say, Mrs. Shaw, who was a very upstanding Black woman with a very commanding voice. And we would say, Mrs. Shaw, can you call the sheriff in Greenwood? Mrs. Shaw would then call 3, 4 o'clock in the morning if we had the sheriff's number, or otherwise the jail. And she would call in and say, look, we know you got Mary Lane in there. She better come out the same way she went in. And always the idea is, how do you continue? How do you not endanger the people, many of whom were doing this work before you got there, and continue to do it after you left? But the other, so they're not just foot soldiers. People keep saying, it's, again, definition. They're not just foot soldiers. Mrs. Boynton was not a foot soldier in Selma. She's working there before Dr. King and SCLC and SNCC get there, right? All of that is about how you define and how you frame the story of this movement. That there were leaders in this movement who were leaders like Amzie Moore, who says to Bob Moses, look, when you come in, Mrs. Baker, you can't talk about SNCC without mentioning Ella Baker. When Bob wants to go in Mississippi, Bob Moses wants to go into Mississippi, he says to Ms. Baker, well, who should I contact? And Ms. Baker says, you need to contact Amzie Moore. Bob stays with Amzie. And Bob says to me, as he often said to other people, he said, when I got there, and I'm staying with Amzie and his family in Cleveland, Mississippi, and Amzie takes out a precinct map and says, look, I'm not ready for you here in Cleveland. I don't have the organization yet for you here in Cleveland. But C.C. Bryant has it down in Macomb, Mississippi. Now, how did he know? Because there was a group already there before we get there called the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. World War II vets coming from World War II, right? Medgar Evers, Amzie Moore. And what they built was this Regional Council of Negro Leadership that helps guide us when we come into Mississippi. And when we go into Macomb, that's where that first voting rights campaign gets built. Part of it is, how do we let people understand that it's not just the amazing Dr. King, that it is also all of these local leaders who are not just foot soldiers. And it goes back to what Courtland just said. It's about how you define people. For example, in the same way that it was very important when people started automatically saying with Garcia, when he was sent illegally to that El Salvador gulag, right? It was really important when they started saying unjustly sent, illegally sent. I mean, when they automatically put that with his name. That's the kind of change that you really want to make sure that you put more context, more definition, so that people really understand what's going on. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make one mention, one thing. Most of us were between 17 and 24 years old.
And this is what we look like. I'm the one staring vacantly into space on this photo. Okay. Right next to me is Joyce Ladner. That's the head of John Lewis. That's Ivanhoe Donaldson, who is campaign manager for Marion Barry and, for Dr. Emmett, and also his deputy manager. Okay, you would also see Courtland over here with Marion, because Courtland was in Marion's administration. We were all, as he said, 17, 18, 19 years old. And that's one of the things I always put this up when I'm talking to a class, because I want them to know we were your age when we were doing what we were doing. And also because they need to see these folks look like me, right? They are my mothers, my cousins, and to say to them, a mass meeting could be 3 people, 3 people, your co-organizer and her mother. And it could be that way for 5, 6 months. Could be that way. Because otherwise, what young people think is, oh, I'm doing something wrong. And you have to let them know, no, mass meetings were not mass meetings. Okay.
Wait, sorry, let me move on to Charlie Cobb.
Again before.
Charlie Cobb.
Yes, I worked in Mississippi for almost 5 years in the early 60s. Before I went to Mississippi, Mississippi was wholly defined by the murder of Emmett Till, as far as I was concerned. As far as I was concerned, there was no place in the universe worse than Mississippi. And what I learned after getting there and beginning to dig in, gain footholds, we used to say, in Mississippi, was that there was a whole system there. And the Ku Klux Klan, which was there and violent, was the least of our problem. There was a whole system there that protected white supremacy. And it grew out of, and we don't have nearly enough time to go into how this happened, but there was a whole set of whites that had power that thought that you really needed, if you're going to, they said you have to win the sympathy of the country. And the way you need to do that is abandon the blatant racism. And thus you get a white citizens council, which is nothing more than the Ku Klux Klan as the Rotary Club. You know, you get you get a whole range of groups like that. Now they protect all the Klan and all the other violent people. And you have to learn how to cope with that. And a lot of times,
Can I interrupt 1 second? What are the lessons that we learned from the civil rights movement that can be applied today as we deal with Trump?
That we're still up against that same system we were up against in the South. That if you want to defeat it, you have to figure out how to make your way to ordinary people, because that's where the strength is that can counter the money that you're up against. That's where the strength is. That's the one thing we learned. And we really weren't aware of that before coming to Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia. Not so much. We had to have somebody like Ella Baker to thank for ratcheting up our awareness of that. But you have to be aware that there are deep wells of strength among ordinary people. And if you can figure out a language that works with them, that enables you to talk with them, you know, you find you have the muscle to challenge what seems invisible. That's the great lesson of the civil rights movement, certainly the Southern civil rights movement, that there's strength in Black communities in particular. And you can organize and mobilize that strength, and you'll be surprised at the kind of difference you make. I'm sorry? I can't hear.
Don't answer my question.
Yes, of course, that was something else. Some interference.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you answer first now?
Yeah, you can hear me.
Okay. So Charlie, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Finish up your 3 minutes. How does this apply to journalists and how they go about their work?
I think journalists, and particularly Black journalists, have to give much more visibility to the assault being made on democracy. Unless you can figure out a way to get people to understand that, you'll get stuck. And unless you figure out a way how to talk to people, the one instrument you have as media, as journalists here, and you have now, for instance, Nazi sympathizers claiming to be fighting anti-Semitism, and you have segregationists claiming the removal of Black history is inclusion. There almost needs to be a drumbeat challenging that. And it's the duty of journalism. The model, I say, is the old National Newspaper Publishers Association. I'm thinking to all the older Black journalists who couldn't work for the white newspapers, who influenced me. I'm thinking of Simeon Booker, who was the bureau chief for Jet Magazine. You know, I'm thinking of Larry Still, also of the Johnson publication in particular. There is a model for what we as journalists, and I used to be a journalist, I do books now, but for a number of years, I was a reporter. And there are models for how the tension for journalists is what's the balance between advocacy and reporting. Myself, I don't worry about that. I know a lot of journalists who do. But I think that's where, if you want to talk specifically about this group, that's the conversation you need to have.
Okay, this is a good segue because we have Dr. Ben Chavis on the line, on this call, who is the president of the NNPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Dr. Chavis, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
What do you think about this?
Well, first, I'm honored just to be Hello.
Somebody needs to mute.
I think somebody needs to mute. I'll wait till they mute. First, I want to say I'm honored to be in the presence of those that I consider to be real heroes and heroines of the civil rights movement. When we use the term civil rights movement, we have to think of its multi-dynamic, multi-pronged. The civil rights movement was not monolithic. The work of SNCC, the work of CORE, the work of SCLC, the work of these grassroots organizations, the Judy Richardson, Courtland Cox, and Charlie Cobb Jr. I've been with the NNPA for 12 years. Currently, we have 255 African-American owned newspapers and media companies, including still the Pittsburgh Courier, the Chicago Defender, the Amsterdam News, the Atlanta Voice. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. The Jackson Advocate and the Mississippi Link. And I think that the role of journalists, Black journalists, is different from the role of white journalists during the civil rights movement and even contemporarily. I think that there's a big debate about if you are a journalist, why do you have to be a Black journalist? Well, we live in a society that is permeated by white supremacy, that lowers it, the society doesn't give the quality of life or the humanity of Black people what it deserves. And that humanity is only going to get the coverage, only going to get the definition if we do it ourselves. But as we explain our own humanity, we have to be cautious that we don't also engage in the inhumanity of others. For example, our Native American brothers and sisters. The genocide that was done against indigenous people, Native Americans, is directly related to the genocide that happened to African people in the transatlantic slave trade. The genocide that was done to Jewish people in the Holocaust. You see, to me, if you ask me what is the definition of racism today, it's a little different than when I was a student militant and wanted to throw rocks at the system. But I would say the definition of racism today is ignorance. We have ignorance in the White House. We have ignorance in the Supreme Court. We have ignorance in the Congress of the United States in terms of who the majorities are now. But and unfortunately, when we don't have the proper education in some of our own communities, we have ignorance in some of our own communities. I was shocked last October. I went to Georgia and I saw a brother wearing a T-shirt saying "Niggas for Trump." I mean, that was devastating. And just in terms of the consciousness. So yes, we still have the black press. Yes, Brother Prince, we need to make sure that black press is strengthened. The digital age is a very challenge. Social media is a challenge, you know, in terms of how to keep these newspapers, how to keep these black-owned businesses alive in the digital age. And now with AI, where all communities are being challenged by artificial intelligence. But you know, I'm not so sure how intelligent it is. I say it's artificial ignorance rather than artificial intelligence. So I think we have work to do. I don't want to be on this call and be pessimistic. We can't afford to be pessimistic. We got to rally our forces at the grassroots level and rally our forces all over the world. One thing I would say before I close, our movement for freedom, justice, and equality in America cannot be isolated or should not be isolated for the global movement of freedom, justice, and equality. And I think that a lot of the freedom movements around the world got an impetus from what we were doing in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s in America. And so I think that each generation, Andy Young says he's 93, I'm 77. I mean, most of us are over 70. But the thing is, it is what is the legacy that we give to our young people? You know, how do we make sure that they're informed? So we learn from history, and so history does not repeat itself. To me, that is the challenge.
Okay, one question for you, and that is, well, framing the discussion has come up, and Courtland Cox and Judy Richardson have both mentioned that. How does the black press frame this issue of Trump differently from the mainstream media?
Well, okay, well, you want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Okay. To me, it's not, it is a matter of framing, but in context, but I think it's a matter of being accurate in our definitions. How do we define white supremacy? How do we define racism? How do we point to the examples of institutionalized racism in our very midst in 2025? Project 2025. Okay, where's our project 2026? Where's our project 2028? And I don't use the word project to copy or mimicking what the oppressor does, but I'm saying is we do have to have a plan. We do have to have an infrastructure. We do have to have where we grasp the learnings from the past. And I think that our history is rich. I think that's why one of the first things now that the Trump administration is trying to do is to attack our museums, to attack our legacies, to attack our heroes and sheroes, and to try to demean and to talk about our inhumanity rather than our humanity. I think we have to not just claim our humanity, we have to express it in how we write about ourselves, how we write about others, and how we tell the truth.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who has questions now for the speakers who have already here?
I have a question about Courtland and Judy especially. So I'm upset about a lot of things. Yes. I'm especially upset. Well, one of the many things is what the lies that are being taught in schools right now, under the pressure from the administration. People who support them. It's scary to me to think what kids are being taught in schools now. Freedom Summer, we have freedom schools. I hope people are now, I don't think I'm in a position to do it right now, are thinking and talking about, or I hope they're already setting up freedom schools. I believe kids.
I mean, I think we have to, again, we have to be responsible for our own humanity. I mean, that's the most important thing that we need to do. And one of the things that we're doing right now, we are developing courses, college courses, to be taught by professors. And on June 27th, right down the street at Yours Truly Hotel, we're going to have 25 professors from around the country to teach them how to teach the course that we're dealing with. We know that, in fact, that if we don't build, and I want people to go on the digital space in the digital world, we need to own it. Because it seems to me, as I mentioned earlier, that you have to go to www.snclegacyproject.org, because you have to have the information. We have a search engine on there that allows people to go anywhere to get information. And we're now organizing it. The other thing that we're doing, we're now transcribing hundreds of hours of audiovisual materials. And we're going to begin to use that to frame questions. So we have John Lewis speaking. We have the minutes of the conferences that we have. People begin to understand. So you have to have an infrastructure to go to. And one of the things that we can't be scared. We can't. And the other thing is we can't be something with nothing. And so the question before us is a point, what is the something that we build that exists both in the digital space and the physical space? And that is the work that we have to do, whether we're talking about, the newspapers, whether you're talking about your column online, and it's important that we all try to point, and I think Andy was talking about it a little bit, we try to point in the same direction. One of the things that we knew when we were coming up, we knew we were at war. And that's the way I view it. I don't go over, I was telling Judy it's coming down. If Trump says something today, something tomorrow, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I made my decision about what has to be done. So I don't get going around in circles about whether he did this or whether he did that, because I know I can't impact that. But what I know I have to do is impact the Black community. Because if they move in a singular direction, it's made the difference earlier and it'll make the difference today.
Okay, let me just add to that. We're doing a lot of things to Stick Digital. I will say to your question, I think it's important that Asala, for example, is doing Saturday schools. I think some churches are doing Saturday schools. However, most Black and brown and white kids do not go to those other schools in the same way that they didn't. It was different in Mississippi. I was in Mississippi in 64. Okay, that's different. Now, I think we really do have to figure out how do you start organizing parents as overwhelmed as they are, so that there's a counterforce to Mothers for Liberty, right? That you have to make sure that there are people there who are stopping people from taking the books off the shelves. Now, I will just say, one of the things that we've done through SNCC Legacy is a project that was supposedly NEH, right? Today, no, let me go back. As a result of this NEH, we mainly deal with K-12 in terms of what I work with. So we've done all of these wonderful books through this NEH, and it's all related to it's called sncdigital.org. It's based at Duke University. It's who we were, what we did, and why we did it. It's profiles of everybody from Charles Sherrod to Bob Moses to Ruby Dar Smith Robinson to Ella Baker. It has documents. It has everything on, and it's really searchable. So what we did is to do documents around the photos and around the documents, and about Charles McLaurin talking about organizing he calls them the little old ladies, and how afraid he was to do that first voter registration that he's doing in the Delta. And he's worried, but he has his little old ladies, as he called them, with him on the bus. And he's thinking about, well, how am I going to get off the bus? What am I going to do? And before he can get off the bus, the three little old ladies are walking up the courthouse step in front of him to go and register to vote. Now, all of that, though, is part of what we're putting in this, all related to primary documents. And the reason it's important is, and we're not the only ones who understand that. So when we had a project, it was supposed to be NEH, and it was, keep in mind, six African-American museums like the Blacksonian, the Memphis Civil Rights Museum, the Atlanta Civil Rights Museum, 6 HBCUs, Morehouse, Howard, Claflin. Now, on our way to Claflin 3 weeks ago, we're about to touch down, and we get this letter from through Duke University saying, your grant no longer effectuates the agency's NEH's needs and priorities. Your grant's immediate termination is necessary to safeguard the interests of the federal government. The termination of your grant represents an urgent priority of our administration. Okay, so what we did, I read this at the beginning of the Claflin.
Duke said that?
Oh, no, this was NEH, and it came through a DOJ associated email, not even NEH, because it didn't even have gov.gov on it, right? It was what they sent to all of the state humanities councils, to all 50 states, right? But we got this as we touched down in Columbia, South Carolina. Okay, so I read this and I said, however, our partners at Duke University's John Hope Franklin Institute, they saved the day. And as a result of their strong support, we've been able to offer the final two. And that was what we did at Claflin, and we did also a women and gender virtual meeting. But the other thing I said is there is power in the history we were sharing today. And there are those who would try to suppress that power, and we will not let them. Because as the Freedom Song says, we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Because see, they know, Trump particularly, because he's just a bully, they know that our fear is their oxygen. And if we start bending in immediacy, even before they do anything, then they've won. What amazes me is that there are people in power, it's these law firms, it's the colleges, although Duke has now today filed a letter of protest. So I have that letter with me too. The main thing is, when I look at these billion-dollar law firms, right, and please, $53 billion in your investment. I mean, at Harvard. What amazes me is, and I keep thinking about Mrs. Hamer and Mrs. Devine and Mama Dolly Raines, who had nothing, who had a history of knowing uncles who had to flee to Chicago or didn't make it in time and so they were lynched. Had that in as part of their DNA, and with no power, they kept coming out to try and register to vote, to try and build this, to try and build that. And yet I look at spineless wonders who have power and are just exceeding with fear even before anything is done to them. So I guess for me, when I think about what do we have to do, and we have women and gender, we have voting rights, we have freedom. How do you get it out? Not just, see, for me, it's not just the Black kids. Because truthfully, I think, yeah, they care about Black kids and what we know. They care about their little daughters and sons. Because I know what happened when white kids came down in Mississippi in '64. It changed how they saw the world. It changed how I saw the world when I come into SNCC. But they care about what their kids are learning. And they do not want their kids to know about Tulsa and what happened after Reconstruction. Because the whole premise of white supremacy is we're better because we're white, right? Meritocracy, when they talk about affirmative action, I think about affirmative action for white people, right? That's what happens after World War II. That's not what they don't want their kids learning this history. It is important that we start organizing parents and stuff in addition to having our own schools and the way that we do things. But it's also, we got a whole public school system, and the Supreme Court is about to allow, religions to control. So, yeah.
Well, Judy, what about, where does the media fit into this issue?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting that I am in the meeting. Okay. Some of it for me is context. Okay. I mean, when I mentioned that I worked with Ben, as a matter of fact, at the United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice, Charlie's daddy first had it, but then Ben takes it over. Reverend Chavis takes it over. I use what I learned in the movement, which was, we had a crusty old white guy who ran the research department, Jack Minnis, right? In '64, all of these white kids are coming down. They're bringing media with them, right? We're trying to show, no, it's not just this crazy white guy, who they just see as, some little redneck, right? Who is the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. And he has now put a Thompson tank in Jackson, Mississippi. And it's on the cover of Newsweek magazine, right? To show, y'all better stay back, because we got this Thompson tank. But people would laugh at him. So what we did in this, it's called A Chronology of Violence and Intimidation in Mississippi. Okay. What we did is we put together all of the reports. We would call around to all the projects twice a day, right? And we called them WATS line reports, WATS, Wide Area Telephone Service. It was like an 800 line. Okay, so we put photos. We put all of the reports in. One of them, for example, is Herbert Lee. It said September 25th, 1961, Liberty, Mississippi. Herbert Lee, a Negro who had been active in voter registration. Somebody needs to mute. Okay. Liberty, Herbert Lee, a Negro who had been active in voter registration, was shot and killed by white state representatives.
We have the main camera and a few headshots above there, but there's nothing that lets me see the whole page.
Okay. Mute everybody. Can we mute everybody? Okay. Was shot and killed in downtown Liberty. No prosecution was undertaken. The authorities explaining that the representative had shot in self-defense. Okay. These are all the way through. You got the photos from our photo department. You got real life, because all of these white folks, New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, they're all coming down. We want them to say, it is not just some white officer or some crazy white mayor who hasn't had enough sensitivity training, right? It is the
Can the people in the room hear me?
Yeah.
We do not have audio on Zoom. We had it for.
You know, as I said, at the end of the day, we have to build the institutions. And the first thing is the belief system that says, we are going to do, we are going to talk and organize our people. I mean, that is the most important thing we can do. I mean, unless there's something else. Why don't you ask the question again?
Yeah, what do we do now? I mean, this history by players, people who played an integral and heroic part in achieving, I mean, what happened 50 years ago? What do we do now? I think that's what we would like to know. That's why we're here tonight. I mean, what do we do now and going forward?
I mean, this first of all, and
Richard,
I'm trying to. You're not going to win everything now. The first thing is you got to have the sense that you are going to do something. That's the most important thing. Each of us has to decide we are going to do something. We're not going to leave here and change the situation. And the second thing, you have to be determined. I mean, the most important thing is that you're going to have to be determined to win. The circumstances, I mean, basically what we're doing is trying to change a relationship. The same kind of relationships we talked about in the 60s is what we're trying to see today. And the same things the same mindset that we had in the 60s, that we're not going to stand for this. Whatever it takes, we are going to change the circumstance is what we have to have now. It is really a belief system. That's the most important thing at this point, because what we're fighting is a belief system. What we're fighting is a belief system. We disagree with it. MAGA is a belief system about where America should be and what it should be. What is your counter belief system that you can organize people around to deal with that? That is the most important thing. I mean, let me tell you something. This country can go to hell in a handbasket, but the belief system was keeping all these people, when the stock market goes down, the bond market goes down, people are being abused and so forth, is a belief system that's holding them together. What is your belief system that's going to fight? If you don't have a belief system that fights their belief system, you're not going to win.
Here, here. Okay, let me ask Ambassador Young a question. Let's call him up again.
Go ahead.
Okay, good. I quoted you, I used a quote of yours on PBS NewsHour, in which you said, "Never let your adversary define the problem, because the things that President Trump considers problems, I consider blessings." So I wonder if you could expand on that and apply it to what we're talking about today, about dealing with the journalists trying to deal with how to confront Trump and Trumpism.
I'm not sure what I was thinking about then. But, what I want to come back to is, we have not taken the national procession. We are focused on Atlanta. Now we're not there. We got a long way to go, but we got the lottery. The lottery, and that wasn't racial, but as a result of winning the lottery and deciding that all of the lottery money is going into higher education and preschool, Eldridge McMillan and Juanita Barranco, sitting on the Board of Regents, developed a tremendous college system. I don't know how many colleges we have in Georgia now, but they're all integrated, and anybody can go to college in Georgia if they make 1,000 on the SAT and have a B average. That has made a tremendous difference for whites and blacks. The controlling or taking over and improving the education system consistently. And then we did things like the Atlanta airport with Maynard Jackson.
Ambassador, we want to talk about the media, if it's okay. And
What's
what lessons that your generation and you personally
that's the
for
lesson.
us in covering.
That is the lesson. The lesson is we have built a city that we designed, that we control to a certain extent. And so far, we're doing fairly well. And it has not affected us yet. Now they've gone after us, but we've gone after them.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, Sam Ford has a question.
No, it's not really a question, but it's just something that I remember. Me and my late wife spent our honeymoon in Zimbabwe. And at that time, their neighbor, of course, was South Africa. The president at the time was Robert Mugabe, who stayed too long, but it's certainly at the beginning of his tenure was interesting. So they mandated that the word racist be spoken anytime the word South Africa is spoken. So they would say the weather today in racist South Africa. In Durban, the temperature is, but the point is it gave the people the message that this is what you're talking about. So is there anybody in here who doesn't think Donald Trump is a racist? His actions. And so, I mean, so if certainly not Channel 7, I don't work, I'm retired now, so I don't work on the air. But what racist Donald Trump every time you're talking about him, the message gets across to black people, this guy is not your friend, and it gets across to them that we're watching you, and that, anyway, that's it.
But that resonates with this crowd. You call them a racist, people say go. Man.
Well, that's fine. I don't care about his crowd. I'm caring about our crowd. Right. And the important thing is, I think, is to get that information out there. So you said do something. This is something you could do. It's an adjective. Racist, Donald Trump. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I see Roger with us. That's a question. And then Marcia Davis has one too.
Yeah,
so does Robin Walker. All right, those three. Roger, Marcia, and Robin.
Well, thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. How does one get white reporters and predominantly white media to address racist issues and racist outcomes from Trump's actions? You mentioned earlier Mississippi Summer. In Mississippi Summer, most of America heard about 3 civil rights workers who were murdered, but that was because the white reporters who came down there only covered what happened to white participants in the voter registration drives, not the other 3 who were black. And most people don't even know about those to this day. So how do we as black journalists, who are still a minority in major media, get the same points across and improve perceptions of the impacts of a racist government on blacks and black communities?
Anybody want to answer that?
I'll take a shot.
Well, let Gene say something, then you.
No, I was just gonna say maybe there is room to act in the fact that major media are shrinking as a, you know, as alternate media rises, as you know, there are lots of different ways to reach people now. Some of the most powerful and influential voices are not major media outlets. So where is, you know, where is the Joe Rogan with sense, right? The Joe Rogan who will fight, and you know, I laugh, but this guy reaches millions and millions and millions of people every day who follow, you know, his every word and who go along with him. So I think, you know, that's. I hope we come up with our Joe Rogan at some point. It's got to be somebody who really talks.
Last month, we had a whole session on social media and how journalists survive and thrive in that realm. So I've yet to write that up, but the video is available for anybody who wants to go back and check out what we said there. Okay, who did I say with that? Marcia.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, there are many things that I want to say, but I'll just keep it to the point here. I think Charlie Cobb had an important point to make about the question of democracy and how we, as journalists, talk about this issue. That is one of the key things. Someone said, maybe it was Ambassador Young, talked about freedom as a way of organizing people. But the question of democracy, which is what we consider ourselves to be tenets of, is really the critical question here in terms of our society and how we raise that question. And it may not be that people want to talk about democracy, but they do want to talk about the right to vote. They do want to talk about the ability to choose education and choices for their children, to get health care. All of these are questions of democracy. And I would like to see us talk about how we develop more of a conversation about that issue of democracy. So that's it.
Okay, anybody want to respond to that?
I mean, you know, what we face at this point is who should be included. And the people who are now in charge want minority rule. You know, the one thing that John Lewis said in March of 1963, which was considered radical at that point, was one person, one vote. And that is up on that even before we get to a whole lot of other things, whether you can participate in this discussion, table stakes. And so we have to have table stakes. And while democracy may seem abstract, while other people are talking about other things, if we don't win that fight, we're not at the table. We don't have table stakes.
I think there's a question of how you wage a struggle for the ideas you want to get across in the corridors of the news institutions we work for. I've lost count of the times when I was doing news. You know, I'm going back and forth. Sometimes it's very little. I remember an editor wanted me, when I was writing about Angola and the FNLA and the MPLA, he wanted me to call the MPLA the communist MPLA. And I said, well, that's not fair. And we went back and forth on this. And finally, you know what changed his mind? I said, okay, if I'm going to call them the communist MPLA, I'm going to call the FNLA the capitalist FNLA. And it ended the discussion. I think we have to figure out how to wage these struggles in the corridors of the institutions we write for or broadcast for, if we want to push forward these larger ideas, whether they're of democracy. I'm fairly tired of hearing about Trump's first 100 days. You know, because I'm worrying about a whole nother thing. Like I say, the assault on human rights. You know, I think sure next year they'll be sending citizens to Gulag. Those are the kinds of things that concern me, but I think you get at that by you have to fight for that in the corridors, of the newsrooms and the newspapers and the televisions. So you have to fight for this, and that raises this whole question of career advancement as distinct from principle and advocacy. And it's everybody goes through that if they're in the news business at some point. And it's a constant struggle.
But Charles, I have a question then. Is there a role for the journalism organizations and associations in implementing what you're talking about?
Yes, I think the journalism organizations like NABJ or any of these have the muscle to really make these kinds of struggles legitimate. Yes, I think for all the assault on, I don't know what the NABJ, whether they've made a statement, for instance, on this whole assault on the Smithsonian that's been going on. I don't know if the NABJ worries aloud about the issues of democracy that will threaten Black people first. Because if they start sending people to gulags, you can bet it's going to be y'all. You know, I don't know what there's a role for sure for whether it's the NABJ or the National Newspaper Publishers Association or any of these organizations. And I don't know how like I said, I haven't done news as such for years now. So I'm sort of out of touch, even though I'm one of the founders of NABJ.
Okay, all right, thanks, Charles. I think Robin Washington was next.
Hey, thank you, Richard. Thank you, everybody. It's great to be in the presence of such giants. I want to hone very specifically on the question of what we can do, particularly those of us who do have a message, and it's something, that should resonate with people to get it out. Judy touched on the SNCC Legacy Project and disseminating that material. Somebody asked a question, how's that being done? Judy, you have a special place in my heart because you actually were on a panel that gave some money to my life work documentary. You don't have to ride Jim Crow, which is about the early days of the civil rights movement. Henry Hampton actually let me call it Eyes on a Prize Part 0. Okay, I own and seriously, and it is not just a happy little memory of the journey in 1947, but it is a guide to how to do this stuff. We have Jim Farmer explaining how to have a restaurant sit-in, okay? Every step you go. So I own this thing. I've been selling VHS tapes, then finally DVDs. Then I got it up on, demand video. Then it's on Amazon. It still is. The price is too high on Amazon now because people expect it free. In response to this whole Trump nonsense of taking away everything, I want to offer this to the world for free. Okay? My question is, I think I'm going to hire a PR person, so it's actually going to cost me something. But how can we get this? How can I get this message out there? And I did actually bring this up to some other documentarians. Can you do it too? So I don't expect people necessarily have the answer right here, but if we can think about this and figure out what is a way to get this out, because these are narratives. Everybody in this room has got some narrative we control and that we can get out. And so that's what I'm asking.
Okay, thanks. Michelle Smith. Michelle,
Yes.
you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, my name is Michelle Smith. I'm formerly with USA Today and now independent investigative journalist. And I had a couple of questions I dropped into the chat, and I'll try to boil them down quickly. I'm curious as to what the activists think about leaders of civil rights. I'm remembering clips of everyone in the media seeming to turn to King, and I'm contrasting that with what we saw in 2020 and before, dating back to Trayvon Martin with Black Lives Matter saying that we didn't need centralized leadership, that everybody could lead on their own in their individual communities. It seems that people are looking for Black leadership. Media is looking for somebody to talk to who can make sense of how we feel. And at the same time, if you're looking on social media, we ourselves are trying to figure out what way to go now. I'll wrap this into my second question, which was your opinions of the rest movement, because there's a big presence on social media that the 92% of those who voted for the Black lady are now resting and not participating as people are being taken away and democracy is eroding. And it's difficult to tell misinformation from disinformation. So all of that wraps into, do we need a leader? Do we need to continue the Black Lives Matter model? And if so, how does all of this come together into something that is cohesive, that media can understand, and that the average person who is watching Charlemagne the God, oh my goodness, can understand? And yeah, I sort of have an opinion about that. But everybody with an opinion can get on YouTube or Instagram or whatever and spout things that are either factual or utter nonsense. How do the people find a leader? How do the newsrooms figure out who the leaders are? Well, that was it.
I think whether I agree or disagree with something, there are a group of people traveling around the country right now going south. I don't know what that's going to lead to, but to me, people in motion is the most important thing. Because as they are in motion, even with my criticism, I'm beginning to think through what should be next. So I think with, I'm not, Brian Snick had something which said strong people don't need strong leaders. So we're not really looking for a leader. We're looking for strength in people. I think one of the things I'd also like to just mention in terms of what Gene said, Gene said, mass media is crumbling. The new things are growing up. New spaces are opening up. How do we now begin to think about that? I mean, we need to, it seems to me, I just think that this space gives us opportunity to do things that we haven't done before, if we are not scared. And as you can say, it's important that we begin to think that even if we disagree with the motion, that people in motion, even I don't listen to Charlemagne, whatever Charlemagne, but I mean, if that person is in motion trying to address and build people's consciousness, that's fine. But I just think that, the one thing we shouldn't be doing is looking for a leader. We should be looking for people in motion.
I would just add to that. Let me just add to that, which is that Miss Baker quote is kind of one of her famous quotes. Strong people need strong leaders. But what she was doing as director of branches for the NAACP was building strong local leadership. Like she would stay with Rosa Parks, right? She knows E.D. Nixon in Montgomery. She knows Harriet Moore in Florida. She is building strong local leadership. Now, what she said to us, the organizers, was You are building strong leaders who can survive, who can survive there in their locations, can survive even your deaths as organizers. You are the organizers, they are the leaders. There was no question in my mind that Amzie Moore was a leader. No question that Fannie Lou Hamer was a leader. You do need people, I think, who are representing your interests and who are part of what we used to call group-centered leadership. But we did say leaders, because I don't think that I think it gets too amorphous. And I think that is one of the things that some of the young people in Black Lives Matter are dealing with now. They're trying to figure out, how do we, when we were trying to build a leaderless movement, what happens when we're trying to move? And do we then get consumed in just endless conversations because nobody's taking the lead? I do think that she was very clear about that there are leaders. But it is about what Courtland's talking about, which is you need people who are going to be in motion. When we were just now at, where was I? I was somewhere. I was in Mississippi. I was in Jackson on Saturday. And a young Black woman said that, she wasn't going to any of the demonstrations. She wasn't doing anything because, white women caused this. And white people caused this, and therefore we, Black people, didn't need to be part of anything that was going to change any of this because they need to take the onus of it. Now that made no sense. And I said to her, no, I said, we have always been where there's movement and we have to be in motion. And we have to also, I got to say, be in coalition with people. You're building your own strength, but part of that is to build strength so that you be in coalition with other people of like mind who agree with you. I'm gonna stop there.
And encouraging us to organize. Miss Baker never talked against leadership. In fact, what I remember her saying in particular was that, and that's a quote I use often, leadership emerges from the movement that emerges. And you have to build the movement and the leadership will emerge. That was said more than once to us in the movement as young people. I never heard Miss Baker talk against leadership or talk about the necessity for leadership. She would say, if you have a movement, leadership will emerge. That's Mrs. Hamer's story. That's Unita Blackwell's story. That's any number of people that I could tick off from Mississippi, which is a state I know the best.
Okay, Hazel Edney has a question. Hazel Price Edney. Price Edney, Hazel? Okay, no, she's there, up there, just after. Okay.
I'm sorry. Ambassador Young earlier made a statement that there is no movement. He said there is no more movement. And so my question to him is, well, what would make it a movement? What we're doing or what we're not doing right now? What would make it a movement? And also I would like Dr. Chavis to follow up on how can the Black media make this a movement, whatever this is?
Well, let me say that there is a movement, and I was trying to describe the movement because what I decided 50 years ago was that we couldn't just talk about it all over the country and couldn't just berate Washington. We had to do it. And so what we've been doing really since I was elected to Congress in 1972, and then Maynard came right back in 1973 and was elected mayor, is you've seen Atlanta just become, well, it started out as a city too busy to hate. And it wasn't just Black folk. The white folks got Daddy King and Calvin Craig to sit together in the same room for about 3 months. And then we passed a mass transit referendum that we insisted 35% of the work done would be done and jobs would be done by Black folk. We then at the same time started building what is now the world's busiest airport. We had $66 billion, no government money. We went to Wall Street. Now, that is a movement. what I was talking about with the schools, and I talked about Juanita Barranco, that two Black people in the border regions really developed an education system for Georgia, everybody, Black and white. See, now we haven't taken over everything, and probably don't want to, but we're holding our own. And the amazing thing about it is that we have produced, every 4 years, we've produced another leader that happens to be Black. But when I went out to the airport, we fought like I don't know what to get 25% of the jobs at the airport for Black people. I go out there and I visit the general manager and go in his board meeting, and I sit there and there's only one white man in the room, but there are only two Black men in the room. Everybody else is Black women. See now, and nobody's making a fuss about it. No, they all look good. They all smart, and they are running the busiest airport in the world, 110 million passengers annually. The second is Beijing, which is only 80 million a year. Now, that is going on and on and on. And to me, I don't like to define that as a movement. It's a process. And the process is going to have to be strong enough to take on the chicanery that's coming out of Washington. I mean, this is just downright insanity. I mean, this is egomania gone crazy. But we've got to protect ourselves against it, and protect our children and our elders against it. And I keep falling back on, and it's not just Black stuff. I was thinking it's something we said today that in the Second World War, when I was coming up, it used to be accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In-Between. There's so much positive going on, but we've talked mostly about the negative. Now, I don't give a damn about the negative. I don't know that we will be worried about this next month. So, I mean, the stock market, people's money is crashing, and they have a certain level of control, but we're beginning to see a little courage in the Supreme Court. Might not be much, but it's there. But you know, I prayed over Clarence Thomas after he got in, and we brought him down here, and we made him spend a weekend with 100 Black Men's Organization, and he was great, but we've lost him. See, but we've lost some mayors. We've lost some. We haven't had many governors to lose, but we've had business people, and the movement. I think of the people who were the leaders of the movement. Selma was led by Mrs. Boynton, and Mrs. Boynton went there in really the year I was born, working with women who didn't, and helping them to take care of their children in the Depression with George Washington Carver. She came to see Martin Luther King in 64, and she brought with her the movement in Selma that changed the Voting Rights Act. It was Fred Shuttlesworth that came to see us in Atlanta in 1962 that started the movement in Birmingham. But it was the people there that were ready, and they came to us and they made us leaders. But I'm not discouraged, and I don't want to give up on. I'm more worried right now about our brothers in Africa because I haven't been able to keep up with them, and it's not that I worry; it's that I'm not only worried, but I used to go to Africa every other month, and I haven't been in the last 10 years. And I don't know what's happening, but I know what's happening in Atlanta. I know what's happening in the state of Georgia. I see what's happening on the football field. And I wish there were more white men that played basketball. But women are coming along with sports. I mean, there is a process, and I'm not nervous about this world, and I'm not nervous about this country. I'm not nervous about this city at all. The one worry I have is most of these women were wonderful and intelligent, but they probably were all the same age as my daughters. And my daughters are in their early 60s. See, and I'm wondering, can they create a generation of leaders, whatever color or agenda they are, that can keep that airport running on time and keep more flights than go anywhere in the world running? Because that's what drives the Atlanta economy.
Running out of time.
And Jesus said, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, heal the sick. And that's the way we're doing it in the airport.
We're running out of time. Okay, Debbie, please, the question.
For those of us who do have to write about that 100 days, because some of us have to do that, can you speak to what you think, or what your take is on his executive orders and policies as relates to civil rights, especially as people who have fought for decades to make sure that there were civil rights? Can you speak to what that take was that like now?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, Mr. Crowley.
When you go in the office, what do people think you have to learn?
They think I have to learn them?
In the first 100 days. I mean, one of the things, as I started out by saying, this is the first 100. And a lot of press I hear, it's about eggs, right? It's not about our humanity. And, one of the things that we have to to me, we have to emphasize is that this is about the humanity, not only of humanity of us as Black people, but Americans and people. I mean, because one of the things that's happened is that Trump has said there are no barriers. We started out with criminals who were immigrants. And his point now, and he said in, I think news, maybe ABC News people, we should ship Americans to El Salvador. There are no limits. There are no limits to that discussion. I mean, in terms of, the whole question of due process, is a whole nother big issue, which gets to the question of democracy and gets to the question. So it does seem to me that the examples of there being no barriers in terms of being sent to El Salvador, there's no due process that is there that needs to be dealt with. There is not only that, the only respect he has for anything, he has no respect for the courts. He says, I might respect the Supreme Court, but all these other people, he has his people attacking judges. So we have to deal with the human issue and not the price of eggs.
Right, okay.
I'm sorry, I do have to just say one thing. The quote that I keep reminding myself about is from Baldwin. And he says to Angela Davis, if they come for you in the morning, they're gonna come for me at night. That's key. So when you see what's happening with the Haitians and, oh, they're eating cats, right? That's me. What amazed me before the election day, I'm looking at PBS NewsHour, and it's a family of 3 Latinos in Texas, wherever in Texas. And the PBS NewsHour reporter is saying, well, why are you voting for Trump? Because he goes to them because they're Trumpers. And the wife says that they had come in illegally, whatever that means, illegally 20 years before, but then they did what was right and got, the papers correctly in the correct process. And so she was fine with them taking all those criminals away and out of her community because she had come from Nicaragua or El Salvador, wherever, and she wants them out of her community. So she does not see herself as those people, right? At the point that you begin not seeing that what they're going to do to you in the morning, they're going to come for me at night, that's the point that really has to be raised everywhere, every time, because Black people will do it too. And for me, I keep coming back to context. It's really important that when people started talking about Garcia as, the mistakenly put there, however they put that, they always tagged it at a certain, and I knew when the change came. At the point that they started saying, there was a one-word thing, incorrectly, but it was a shortened, deported so-and-so Garcia. That was really key because automatically, every time you heard Garcia, you knew, oh, that was not done right. Even Trump is saying it's not done right.
Maryland man.
Hmm?
Maryland man.
Yeah.
That was the other thing, yeah.
Oh, the Maryland man,
They started
that's
calling
right.
Maryland man.
Exactly. That at the point that you do that and you humanize them and you say, they're like us and they come for you in the morning, they're gonna come for you at night, that's really key.
Okay. All right, we have some more people that have their hands raised, but I do want to get to some of the journalists who covered the civil rights movement or who were part of it. So I see that Charlene Hunter-Golf is here, and Harold Simpson is here, and Jack White is here. Let me hear from some of them. Do you all have any observations to make about this time that we're in now and comparing it to the rest of the learned in the civil rights movement? Wait, Charlene, you're on mute, please. Your lips are moving, please. He's done here.
She's not, you're muted.
I'm muted. Okay.
Unmute, please, Charlene.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering if you were going to let me get away without saying anything. And let me just also say how wonderful it is to see all of these pioneers who have enabled people like me to be where I have been and where I hope to go as I continue to try and report the news. But as I listened to everybody tonight and I looked at who all is on this panel, I was thinking about why we need a coalition of the generations. Because we have people like Charles and Andrew and others who have been through the challenges to democracy, and yet they have overcome. I often, when I speak to students, I end with a quote from Vernon Jordan, who was also speaking to students once at a graduation, where he said, I have come to say to you this morning, we have been here before, but our journey also teaches us that endurance is not enough. Listen, we do not sing, we shall endure. We sing, we shall overcome. And I just love that quote because it's the optimism of someone who has been through a lot of discrimination and yet understands that there are things that you have to do to keep on keeping on. And so as I listen to everybody today, and I'm so happy that you insisted that I be here, even though this is bedtime. But I think that given what I've heard from everybody today, we need a coalition of the generations so that the older people who have been through the struggle and who have won in many instances. I mean, we didn't we didn't lose everything. We still have a lot of, we have a long road to go, a long road to hoe, but we are in positions that we may never have been in the past. And so what I'm hoping is that we can get a coalition of the generations to discuss how those who are my age, 83, and well, I'm not as old as Andy, but but I just saw him here in Sarasota, Florida, and he was amazing. I want to know how he does it. But anyway, we need that coalition of the generations to share the ways in which they have made the progress up to this point, but also why it is that I go to a predominantly Black school and I speak to the students and I said something about the 54 decision. And these are middle school students. And I said, you all know what the 54 decision, and everybody went, no. So I told them, I did, at another place, I made them go look it up. But in this instance, I didn't have a lot of time. So I said, well, just look it up, the 1954 decision. On my way out of this meeting at the school, the young Black teacher who had to be maybe in her 30s, possibly late 30s, she walked with me to my car and she said, thank you so much for coming. And I want to make a confession. I said, what is the confession? Again, this woman is in her late 30s, maybe. She said, I didn't know what the 54 decision was either. This is a Black teacher in a predominantly Black school. So it seems to me that if we put together this coalition of the generations, one of the things that those who are my age and Andy's age should be doing is sharing the history that has enabled us to, shall we say, that has enabled us to be in places that we never would have been before. And yet there's still more to go, more miles to travel. So I'm again calling for a coalition of the generations so that we can bring together the older people like myself and Andy, but Andy knows more than I do, so maybe not just me, but others who have been there and done that and can share how they did it with the young people. And the other thing I want to mention real quickly is how back in the day, before the end of segregation in, say, Atlanta, Julian Bond joined up with a professor at Clark College, Carl Holman, and they created a newspaper. It was called the Atlanta Inquirer. And the reason they did that was because the Black newspaper would not cover the civil rights movement. Because, why? Their advertisers were white and they did not want to offend them. So I was at the University of Georgia, one of the first 2 Black students, and I would drive home the 70 miles or so every weekend, and I would go to Carl Holman's basement where the paper, Julian was working on the paper and Carl was working on the paper, and wait until the students who had been arrested would come to Carl's basement and tell their stories. And this paper was created because nobody else was telling those stories. So I think one of the things we need to look around at today is who's telling our stories. And I got a notice from a young University of Georgia graduate the other day. She had just gotten a promotion at the paper she was working at. And she was so excited because she was the only Black reporter and the only one going into the Black neighborhoods telling the Black stories. So we have a lot of history that we need to embrace and learn more about and be a part of. And I'm just very happy to have listened to all of you today. You have so inspired me to keep on keeping on. And thank you so much for putting this together. And thank you for having me.
One question, Charlene, and that is, does this coalition of the generations apply to people in the news business also?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, we have the Washington Post, former Washington Post reporter. I was near him leaving, but I'm hoping he'll find a good place to put his words out and to figure out how to I mean, one of the things we can see right now is that the NewsHour, PBS NewsHour, so many of the journalistic institutions that are trying to do the right thing are threatened. They're under threat, or they will be under threat. And so I don't know where that's going. I'm not a mind reader, and history doesn't tell me where it's going. But Carol, you're shaking your head. Maybe you know, because she's been there too. And I just think that is why we need this coalition of the generations, so that we can bring our history where that has been successful in so many ways to today's problems and challenges. We have a good history, and we have to use it, and we have to teach it, and we have to realize that that's going to take us onward to a more perfect union.
Okay, Carol, since you were nodding your head and you were name checked, Carol Simpson, what is your reaction to that?
Yeah.
I've been trying to get your attention for a long time.
Oh, sorry.
This is not to diminish anything that our civil rights workers and pioneers and leaders have said tonight. I'm kind of like Andy Young. I'm 84, older than Charlene. And so I've seen a lot in the 80 years that I've lived. And I just want to say that we are in a whole new world. We're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. This is not about the South, and it's not about blacks and whites. It's about America, and it's about our country, and it's about a democracy, whether that's going to survive. And I don't think it's necessary for us to split off from white people. I think we all have to get together, every kind of American there is, to try to get rid of this maniac that is threatening to destroy our democracy and our country. I mean, it's almost dystopian. I listen to every day, there's something else crazy that this man has decided to do, and we have got to get him out of there. And if it's marching, that's one thing we can take from the civil rights movement. We need to march. We need to have direct action. Rachel Maddow's been showing all over the country, all of the little towns and cities that have been having demonstrations against Trump. But we all need to pool all of our energies and all of our money and everything else into getting rid of Donald Trump.
Carol.
Yes.
So how does the media fit into this?
How does the media fit into this? Clearly it's not, because of Jeff Bezos has taken over the Post. I mean, look at all of these billionaires that have taken over newspapers. We don't control the media. People were saying we need to have more black stories and more people telling from our point of view. And I think we're past that now. We are past that. It's time for a new paradigm. It's time, as I certainly agree with Charlene, that we have to get the generations together, because they don't know anything. Gen Z's coming along, and they are not too smart. So those of us who are older need to get with them and try to educate them. But as I say, there's one single most goal that all of us must have in mind, and that is Trump, and getting him out of here, running him out on a what do they call that? On a rail running him out of town on a rail, yes. And I wonder if anybody else feels that way. As I say, I think it's beyond Black people. It's beyond our history and making sure our young people know that. We have to act soon. We have to act soon.
Okay, but Carol, but journalists can't do that by themselves. They have a specific role in society, and we want to address how they use that role to acquit themselves. But before that, let me look. We're running out of time. I see Jack White also is on this call. Jack,
Let
are
me
you
tell
there?
you one thing, Rich.
Okay.
I have noticed reporters drawing back on how they're reporting on Trump. And they are Black reporters and they are white reporters. And they are soft pedaling. They're scared. They're scared they're going to lose their job. They're scared that Trump is going to sue them. So I wonder how big a role we can have in that. We don't control the media. We control the Black press, but we need to reach all of America. You know, it's not about Mississippi. It's about Idaho and Utah and Arizona and these red states that seem to go along with whatever he.
I want to ask if you want to say something.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Now we have here, I didn't want to get away before we introduced Angela Breland-Keene, who is, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who is the president of Jaws, which is the Journal of Women supposedly. And I just wanted to know whether she had anything to add to the conversation for us at point of view.
Well, it's a fascinating conversation. Thanks for including me. Yeah, so many thoughts. In addition to being president of JAWS, National Women's Journalism Organization, I run the news at Bloomberg Government. So, certainly part of the mainstream media. We cover the 100 days. We're doing all those stories, trying to, shed light as we can. Obviously, always use facts. But we think about all the things every day. Our role is to be activists. Our role is to tell the story. But we do talk every day about, how do we tell the story? What words do we use? We don't want to equivocate. There's not two sides to things that are going on with race, obviously, but rights of all sorts of marginalized communities right now. So, hearing and the young people part, I think is really interesting. That's one of the stories that we look at telling, because Congress, as we all know, is on average not young right now. But who are the leaders? How are we telling the stories? Who are the voices? And I certainly don't have answers. But I think it's important to think about these things, to talk about them, and to hear from people who have lived through previous areas of turmoil. 49, so everyone else stated their age. I'm 49. So younger, so some things I feel old, but younger than a lot of people who are talking about this. I was born in the 60s. So it's, I think it is important for those of us who are in newsrooms today, and I'm in a newsroom myself, but I also talk with people in JAWS and newsrooms all over the country. And
what do they think about what's going on?
I mean, we have a lot of White House. I'm a former White House correspondent in the Obama administration. Thank you for great info. But we have a number of White House reporters and as members of JAWS, and they're having a very hard time. All of these things. I mean, I don't think they're personally worried about losing their job just because of that they have their employers have their backs, but they're bullied every day by White House press people. They don't have easy jobs right now. They realize their jobs are important.
Is there a difference between the way women are journalists are treated and
I don't think that male journalists are being treated well either. At the moment, I think it's probably worse for women and people of color.
Why do you think that?
All the things we're talking about.
Okay, all right. Anybody got any questions before we let her out of the room?
I would early panel.
She's got an early panel. Okay, no questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so glad you made it. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, now to the other people who covered the movement, I see that not only is Jack White here, but then Juan Williams. I don't know if he's still here. He just wrote a book about the post-civil rights era. Are either of those two gentlemen there? No? Okay. All right, we'll move on then to the Paolo Baptiste had a question on also had his hand raised earlier.
Richard, thank you so much. Great program as usual. My name is Bala Baptiste. I'm professor of mass communications. I'm at Miles College in Birmingham. Hello, colleagues. Look, the Civil Rights Act of 64, Title VII says that the EEOC enforces laws that prohibit discrimination based on race. Based on race is important. Trump has turned that upside down such that race now means white people. So we can not have DEI because that is a discrimination based on race. What do you guys think? I'm proposing that since the civil rights movement passed 5 laws between 57 and 68, we need new legislation. And that legislation should say something like this. The EEOC enforces laws that prohibit discrimination against African Americans, Native Americans, and so forth. Some specificity is needed. I'm interested in knowing what are thoughts about that.
I got any quick thoughts about that? Okay. All right, I think we need to, or I can't see if anybody else has got his hand, just heard hand raised. See somebody's.
Word up to Jack, is he?
I don't see him anymore. Is he still there?
I don't see him.
Okay, he must have signed on.
Richard, I just want to say to the last speaker that there are not going to be any more civil rights laws passed.
Get real.
Yeah, get real.
Not going to happen.
Okay. All right. It's time for us. Oh, Anthony Wilson. All right. Anthony, you're the last person.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something I said in the chat, and that is that we
Dr.
really
Travis
have...
has his hand up too. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to just repeat something I said in the chat in case people missed it, and that is we have a very obvious generational disconnect in terms of what's happening with the communication with the younger people now. And I'm not a TikTok fan, but I acknowledge that that's where a lot of very intelligent younger people are speaking truth to power and talking about things that could help advance what we're talking about this evening. So I'm just asking the group to consider that. Check it out. You don't necessarily have to be a member, but there's some amazing, interesting, intelligent people, not just the Charlemagne the God types on TikTok.
Okay, thanks. And then Dr. Travis.
Well, once again, I'll be very short. Thank you again, Richard, for putting this together. Just 2 minor points. One, I think I agree with Charlene about this call for a coalition of generations. And I really think that all of us, no matter what our current age, we all were young once. And it was while we were young that we dared to push forward in ways that people were older than us at that time were not. So I think we just can't invert the movement. If the movement is always led by people over 50, we're not going to win. Number 2, I think what Andy Young said should not be discounted. And I'm glad to let Charlene know that the Atlanta Inquirer is still publishing. We have 5 Black-owned newspapers in Atlanta alone. And I think that Atlanta needs to, Du Bois wrote about the Philadelphia Negro. Somebody needs to write about the Atlanta African Americans because they've done something that represents our progress. Yes, we have to struggle, continue to struggle, but I'm not in favor of struggling to struggle. We should struggle to win, and we have to define what is winning. We have to encourage one another. When Brother Cox says about a belief system, absolutely. For me, it's a faith. I think I have a faith in people of African descent that we can rise above the legacies of the genocide, the legacies of the transatlantic slave trade, the legacies of Jim Crow, and even up until today. I think that 20, 40, 50 years from now, people will look back at this time. Yes, it's a crazy time, it's an awful time, but it's not a permanent time. And our role is to make sure that we involve in that transformation of the time to a better future. Thank you very much. I'm proud of the Black-owned press.
All right, thank you. Okay, two other people I just want to acknowledge who go beyond way before the civil rights movement. One is Frederick Douglass. I asked his great one of these greats grandsons about what he would say today, and he pointed me to a piece he wrote, which I linked to in the notices, so you can look that up. But gist of it was, agitate, agitate, agitate still applies, and power to keep nothing without a demand still applies. Now, we also have on the panel here a grandniece of William Monroe Trotter, who was an activist, publisher, and editor back in the early 1900s. And his grandniece is here, Peggy Trotter, Damon Priestley, and we had a group of columnists who named themselves after the Trotter group. I just wonder whether she has anything she wants to add to the conversation.
And she was in SNCC.
And she was in SNCC, all right.
Southwest Georgia.
Yes.
Still I'm a SNCC. and I'm 82. Thank you, brothers and sisters. This has been incredible. I was thinking of what Uncle Monroe would be calling for. I think he would be calling for a general strike, because he was about not only thinking, he was about action. And the steps that we went through in the civil rights movement, I was thinking about them in reflection of all of the talks today with my colleagues, Charlie and Judy and Courtland and other SNCC members. There's a time for not just rest, but discernment. There's a time for private meetings where we don't reveal all in the open. There's a time for multiple strategies, a time for action, and a time to prepare for consequences, to protect our resources. We cannot grow weary. It's a journey. And in terms of the genius of the evil genius who's in the White House right now, the genius to me is that he has a simplicity of message, and it's repetition, repetition. So as we reclaim our narrative, we have to remember what the educational level in America is, who we're speaking to, and not have too complex a message, but that it needs to be repeated and repeated. And that is something that the media can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And one last person who had her hand up, if we didn't get to it, that's Barbara Reynolds, Dr. Barbara Reynolds, who was also around during the movement covering things. Barbara, are you still there? Just dropped off? Okay, all right, well, she will let her use it, we know, in the chat room or elsewhere. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Can I close with a quote of Martin Luther King? And Martin's, one of his favorite quotes was, "Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, for behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own."
But I close with a quote from Miss Baker.
Go ahead.
All right. Miss Baker says, "I'm part of the human family. What the human family will accomplish," she says, "I can't control. But somewhere down the line, the numbers increase. The tribe increases." And so she said, "So how do you keep on?" She said, "I can't help it. I believe that the struggle is eternal. Somebody else carries on." That's Miss Baker.
All right. Okay. And on that note, thank you all very much. There will be a transcript of the chat room that I'll distribute to those for whom we have email addresses. And then we hope to see some of you next month. We don't have a topic yet, but if anybody has suggestions.
And if everybody wants to see these, I'll leave these out here.
Yeah, okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
I invite anyone who would like a sandwich for the road to help yourself, sandwich or anything else.
All right.
With that in mind, there's always something left.
They just trying to get the bridges in, Louisiana.
I do. I'm doing good. You gotta come back next time. All right.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
That was weeks ago. Yes.
I knew it back in the day, we're going to try to make. Hey, keep it faith.
No, I knew him.
Hey, hold on.
Let's see, I'll give you his cell number.
I'm not that we put the back.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why I decided, you know, it's only been a couple of weeks. I'm gonna take a few days. I'm gonna leave it.
I do want one, but I'm just gonna do this, yes.
Somebody else doesn't know that. What? We don't need.
This is longer than usual.
Other than a right before.
I'm happy to please take all of this. I just need to.
Oh, my God.
Is that right? Well, when the cut is cut. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
All male class of 1969. Such good physical shape at 67 years old, he was an acceptable donor.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
They both played gang members in the high school play, The West Side Story, and even recall their lines.
In a good way. In a good way. It's like,
The others are mine.
it's good. No,
Yeah. Glad you got that.
I'm like, thank you, Andrew.
In the draft.
Yeah, it was.
Got the video wrong.
That's kidding?
Yeah.
I've met him, like, but he's, you know, he looks, you know what it was, just not shiny.
Ah.
I mean, I knew it wasn't.
Right, yeah, that reminds me of that.
One of the Republicans, one of the state of mind.
Oh, Judy Richardson. Judy Richardson. She did, she worked on Eyes on the Prize. The documentary. Daughter, I know, did
we gotta change it, that's right. We got a very good work.
Well, I told her, oh, okay. Yeah. It's over today. I think it went around longer than I saw. Right, that's right. I was warned that you might go.
And they're all free.
He's the only one who's around, everybody just listening to me.
Right.
Okay. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, how,
Yeah, that's what we
how-
remember.
That's why you, but now. No.
That's why this, that told me.
That was the intent, right, that was the Baltimore, that was Baltimore, yes. That's right. You said picture, that's. By the way.
And then that Marion Barrett.
Yes, and that's.
The guy
That's
is
not-
probably,
But I'll tell you, we will be trying to get them in, yeah. They got they want to
I think they could, but they
like some, yes, it was wonderful, and I'm saying that not just because you used my phone, but it's also. It was really so good.
I don't know about today.
Yes.
We worked at National Geographic.
And I got it. Three what? Three different people.
When you get home, look him up on
I don't.
his bio. In fact, he sent me his bio. I can send it to you. Yeah, he's a good guy though.
Let's see, Maureen still kicking.
Oh, yeah, well, now English is kind of anything, Dave, but also international women.
Is that right?
Yeah. But Charlie did a book called
But now, Saturday, they're gonna do a march on Johnny Williams. Yes. You did. And I went.
Let's turn everything off. I don't know why. The play was audio won't come through.
Now, let me just ask.
Yeah.
How they carried on.
Three, just long.
They're long. I mean, everybody long. Oh, yeah. I tell you what. If I were you, I'd meet him at the.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Hey,